Alright guys, got a nice game to share with you today, and the really interesting thing that I want you to focus on for this game is that everything can change with one sloppy move. So I'm not saying that I played really well for the rest of the game, but as you'll see, I do find myself in a position where I have what should be a winning advantage, and one slip up, I just take my eye off the ball just for a moment. And what I failed to do was, on every move in every situation, to say to myself, okay, what do I have to do in order to convert this win, in order to win this game? So let's go through the game. So I'm playing with the black pieces. We're both rated in 1460s. We have e4 and I'm playing d6, the pits, defense, d4, knight to f6, so we're going for the black lion opening, and now knight out and knight out, and e5. So far so good. And we have this exchange in the middle of the board. That's all fine. And now the bishop comes out pinning my knight. I break the pin, bishop comes out, and now I play b7. So maybe ideas of fianchetto this bishop, and white castles, and I put my bishop on b7, so it's now looking down towards white's king. We have the rook comes across to the center, and I castle as well. So this is not, we're outside of normal black lion territory, but that's what you need to do. It depends what your opponent plays. So I bring my bishop out now to pin the knight against the rook. This knight's okay because it's still currently guarded by my queen and by the other knight. And we have the second rook comes to the center. This is an open file now, completely open D file. So always good to have your rooks on open files. I take the knight, doubling white's pawn. So white now has an isolated pawn on the A file and double isolated pawns on the C file. A very slight advantage, but a very useful tactical advantage nonetheless. So now I push A6, and this is taking this square away in case white has any ideas of putting his bishop on there. The queen now retreats out of the way of the rook, and I push c5, gaining a bit of space, and we have bishop takes knight, and then I recapture with the queen. So I've got ideas of maybe putting my queen here, and I've also got my bishop still, remember, looking down that nice long diagonal as well. So far so good. Bishop comes across now pointing at my king, and I kick the bishop, and now in this case white decides to sacrifice the bishop but look, yes, so with that bishop move I fail to notice that my knight is hanging. So white figures this is a free pawn at least, so grab the pawn, and yeah, I completely missed that. Now I hit the rook retreats. Okay, so I'm down one pawn at this time because I got the bishop back. Now we are equal because I've grabbed another pawn, and the queen comes in. So this game kind of unravels pretty quickly now. So c4 hits the queen, and the queen comes down to d6, maybe prompting an exchange. I certainly don't want that queen to capture my queen because I'd have to recapture with a g-pawn, opening up my king. Don't really want to do that. But also I need to protect this bishop. Okay, so that pretty much forces an exchange of queens. Now I bring my bishop back because it's attacked by the rook, and I still want to protect, you see, the b5 pawn, which is protecting that one in turn. Okay, so now I drop a pawn, but I gain another one with my rook, and we have knight round to there, and now I decide that actually I do have enough of an edge, I think, in order to convert this game. So I don't mind now trading my bishop for white's knight in the ending, and now we get to the critical point. So we both have 3 pawns in front of our king, so we both, white and black, both have to watch out for back rank mates. I grab another pawn now, so now I am 1 pawn in front. Okay, remember I've got 21 minutes still on my clock, my opponent has 22 minutes, so there's plenty of time for thought. White now creates an escape square for the king, just in case I get a rook onto the back rank. He wants to be able to get out of check or checkmate. And I bring my rook across to b5. Sorry, to b8. Now the rook, White's rook, comes over to b1. So at this point, what do I have to do to win the game? I am a pawn up, right? I've got 2 pawns completely in the clear, apart from marauding rooks, but each pawn is currently protected by a rook. Okay, and now I push b4, and this is my mistake. Okay, can you see why it's a mistake? I haven't done the key thing that White has done. Now look, in this situation, right, that pawn is protected, that pawn is protected, right? This rook can't come to the back rank, okay? However, although this pawn is protected, my rook cannot leave the back rank, because if I do, we have rook c8, and that would actually be checkmate, and that would not be good. So what I should have done, actually, instead of this move, instead of moving my rook there, I should have actually pushed this pawn now, because then if the rook comes across, I push again and it's protected by its partner on the c-pawn. Okay, but I'm kind of rushing. So how long did I take over this move? 4.4 seconds, that's all. I've got 21 damn minutes on the clock, right? And rook comes across and I figure this is fine, I'll just push my pawn. Rook takes, and now that's when I realise I can't simply recapture. So I move my rook across to attack White's other pawn, and we have rook takes. Now I slide my rook across, I don't want to swap off rooks at this point. So now, going from being 1 pawn up, I'm 1 pawn down. Right, there's nothing I can do. Okay, pawn comes across to protect. I push a pawn, and we'll just play through the rest of the game. White plays pretty solidly now and doesn't have all that much to do. This pawn is actually safe right now. It's attacked by 2 rooks, but it's defended twice as well. Pawns push, and then we get a pawn here. Now this is now a pretty critical point. Obviously, I can't capture the pawn as much as I would like to because my king would be in check from the rook. So I move my king back. We have pawn takes, rook takes, and now, you see, after pawn takes, that comes with check. So I have to do that. Now I've got a rook hanging on e1, and after rook captures g6, the game is over. I have to move out of check, and now White is going to grab my extra rook and go on to win the game with ease. So it all comes back to one sloppy decision. I just didn't look far enough at this point. Okay, this was my big blunder, I believe. Okay, so all I needed to do here was, because there's no passed pawn. I mean, my pawn can always capture on e6 right now. Okay, all I needed to do was to push that pawn, and I would have been absolutely fine. But one silly blunder, and forgetting that this rook cannot leave the back rank while my king is in the middle of these 3 pawns. Okay, if my king was there, it would have been fine, because my king can always go to e7, right? But with my king still here, and because I didn't do this and create an escape square, both of these beautiful pawns fall, and there's really nothing I can do. I mean, yeah, I couldn't capture the rook there. So, and now there's 2 rooks attacking the pawn, and there's nothing I can do. So there you go. Sobering lesson. You know, I played a decent game. I could very easily have won it. I should have won it. It all comes down to very, very small margins and small decisions, really. So yeah, sobering lesson. I will try and maintain that this mental attitude where you're thinking like every game is do or die. Every game is, you know, your life depends on it. That's the way that you need to approach chess if you want to start winning more consistently, beating better opponents, right? This guy, I had him on the ropes and I just didn't manage to deliver the final blow. Okay, so there you go. You live and learn. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. See you soon.